Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all who are watching. This is Kitika von Hunen from Between Two Cultures. I'm a certified intercultural trainer, and with my trainings, I help leaders and in multinational teams work with competence and confidence across cultures. And one of the things I also do is interview non-Western writers so that what I also do is interview non-Western writers to give them the non-Western perspective of culture, what it is and what it's about, because till now there is a lot of research done and books written by American, European writers, but how about the non-Western perspective? That will be more insight will be given by people who are non-Western writers who write on non-Western culture. And today I have Aarti Kelshikar, who is an intercultural trainer, a coach, and she is the founder of 3A Consulting, and she has written two books. One is How India Works, which was launched in 2018. And the second book, which was launched February this year, 2023, is How Women Work. So today I will be interviewing her so that she can give us her opinion and experience about the non-Western perspective of culture. So welcome, Aarti.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yes.
Kitika. Nice to be here. Yeah.
You have written two books. Would you like to say what it is that motivated you to write two books?
Yeah, sure. So I think, on a personal level, I mean, writing is really something that I enjoy doing. It's, I think, a sense of purpose, a sense of fulfillment. It is a passion. So I think I write because I enjoy it, as simple as that. Having said that, I think the fact that, as an intercultural coach, you come across real world examples, as I'm sure you do as well, in terms of how people work, or some of the problems in collaboration and communication. And you realize that one really needs to work on building and creating that awareness, right? I mean, that's what we do as an intercultural coach. And I got into writing the first book, through a series of events which I won't go into now. But the broad premise was really to enable a sense of understanding, a sense of awareness, and if possible, I mean, that's a bonus, to enable an appreciation, of the finer cultural nuances that people don't really think about as much, don't talk about as much when they're working in a different country, or, with a different set of people. So I think, as an intercultural trainer, to be able to facilitate better working efficiency, greater collaboration, reduced misunderstandings. I think those are some goals that we all have. And I think being able to write, being able to share my insights and those of others, that I've interviewed in the book, is very useful. And it's also interesting because then you get access to so many more perspectives. So I think that's been the broad premise of both my books, How India Works, and the second one, How Women Work.
Thank you. Very interesting. And as an intercultural trainer to an intercultural trainer and a writer to a writer, I would like to ask your opinion about what I just said, that researches are mostly done in Europe and America, and of course, nice books are written. It's not that it's wrong. But would you agree, for example, I see here clients who are from the Dutch culture, the European culture. For example, we are direct in our communication, and they have people working with them who come from an indirect way of communicating culture, and they are mostly sent into trainings to become more direct. So for myself, in my opinion, I think it is a bit of a bias that you could use that, harness the balance what the other one brings, actually. Would you agree to that, that such a bias could exist? Or what is your experienced opinion about that?
No, the bias is definitely there. And I think it's only natural, right? Because we do tend to look at things from our lens and our perspective, right? As Ananian said, right? I mean, we see things the way we are trained to see them, or the way we've grown up seeing them. So there's nothing wrong in that. The problem, though, is that we have to recognize that just as we have our ways of doing things, other people have their ways of doing things, and that's not good or bad, right or wrong. But we have to be open to that, and to recognize that there can be some positive things out of some of those differences, and how do we work around them, and how do we harness the strengths. So I think that's the whole point of working across cultures, especially with some help, whether it's through books or through intercultural coaching. And I did feel that that was, the issue, even with books on women leadership, because when I looked around, I was in Singapore at the time, and the number of books that I came across on women leadership, women empowerment, etc., were mostly written by Western authors. And I was surprised because, there weren't really Asian authors writing on Asian women. And that's when I decided to write the second book, which was, basically using an Asian lens to look at, women in Asia and their journeys and their careers. So I do think that there is this mismatch or this disconnect. But that's what, the whole idea is, to kind of educate and inform and, train people around that.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't read your second book, How to Work with Women, but it's in my bucket list, and I will read it to be sure.
Okay.
Really interesting book. What I did read was how India works, and that's a very inspiring book. And also that you are very much experienced working both in the West and in the East. I would like to ask you to explain to the listeners how the Western perspective on the aspect of leaders and organizations could harness this talent, let's say, that comes from people who are non-Western culture.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think a couple of things to this. I think, for example, if you look at India, people should, need to recognize that they should focus on harnessing, the innate strengths that people bring to the table, right? Because very often people are, upset, or, just generally not in a great place. So they're not able to appreciate the good things, right? So I think that's the first thing, to be able to be a little more open, to realize that it's not black and white. In many parts of the world, things are black and white. And I think in Asia, and in some parts of Asia particularly, it's not as simple. It can be fairly ambiguous. It can be fairly unclear. So I think to recognize that, and to say, okay, let me be open to that. Let me be, let me look deeper, and let me look beyond. Oftentimes, foreigners make the mistake of taking things on face value, and that doesn't work in the entire Asian context, as you know, right? Because what is said is not often what is meant, for a number of reasons, and one needs to go deeper. One needs to understand ask open-ended questions. So I think these are a couple of things, in terms of being more open, in terms of being more flexible, more patient, more curious. Also to understand that, everything has its pros and its cons. So again, you have the Indian attitude towards time, for example, which is a little fluid. But there are good things about it, which is that, people are flexible. People will accommodate you. They will take meetings. They will work, through a weekend if they have to deliver. And these are all very positive things, especially in the world of today with VUCA, etc. So, that's one example. Another example is that in general, people may not operate with very well in a structured environment. They don't plan always ahead. They're not very good with process. But on the flip side, they are creative, and they can think ahead, they can innovate on the fly, and there are some positive things about it as well. So I think if one is able to be patient, if one is able to balance, the different aspects, and kind of look at things in a more open, non-judgmental way, those are qualities that help people when they're working across cultures, and definitely in Asia.
Thank you. That was indeed, I agree to it, let's say. And in your book about working with India, you had a very nice chapter on live to work and work to live, which I found very interesting, of course. Could you elaborate a bit for the listener?
Yeah.
What would you mean by
So
that? What would it mean for them? Why do they do it?
yeah. So largely speaking, that's true. I mean, certainly of my generation and the older ones, in terms of how the mindset is about working, and kind of working to live. And I think there are different reasons for it. One is, of course, the practical, which is that people have to fend for themselves. It's a competitive, it's, as you know, usually populated, so everybody has to kind of make their own path in life, right? It's there's not much of social state benefits in terms of medical or retirement or health or whatever. So again, you have to plan, and you have to be self-sufficient for life, right? So to that end, and then things are very expensive in the bigger cities, etc. So to get a seat on the bus is not easy. People have to fight, and which means that they start very early, in terms of studying, and in terms of getting a good education and doing really well, getting that first job. Yeah. But then it doesn't end with the first job, because then there is a lot of pressure, a lot of things are needed to be done ASAP. And, it's a competitive, fast-paced environment. So, so what happens typically is that there is pressure to work, there is pressure to deliver. And the Indian ethos is really about working. Society kind of encourages people to think about work, and people say, oh wow, they're sacrificing, it's a great thing. So that's seen in a good way. And also, there's not that much of recreational options available unless you are uh, from a slightly more privileged background. So in the absence of that, there is basically people end up working, much more than they need to. So that's the broad premise, give or take a few things. Um, but I think this is changing with the younger generation. I don't see them as fixated about work. They are, especially in the aftermath of of COVID, they are very clear about wanting to work and live on their terms. They want to find passion and fulfillment, sorry, at work. So I think these are things that are important for them. So while that is true on a broad societal level, I think it's not as true or as relevant for the younger generation.
It's nice you mentioned the generation. Indeed, I see it also in the Netherlands. They are really changing the new generations things very differently. Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and my clients who want to work with Indians or who are working with Indians, they always have the same question, which I would like to put to you: is why do the Indians say yes, but they do no? In your
Yeah.
experience, how would you see this? How would you explain it, let's say, to people who are not used to
Yeah, so I have
indirect
spoken
way?
about this in, sorry, yeah, so I have spoken about this in my book, and it is an important factor that comes up often enough. And I faced it myself, as a repatriating Indian. So I think there are a number of reasons for this. It's not black and white again, as is the case with so many things in India. So I think firstly you have to understand that a lot of Indians grow up in, with elders in the family, or they grew up in a slightly extended ecosystem where, because of the entrenched hierarchy or, societal values, cultural values, they are, as younger people, they are expected to say yes to elders and not challenge them or disobey them. This kind of spills over to the workplace, right, where a boss is put on a pedestal. So oftentimes, if a boss asks them to do something, even if they feel that it may not be possible, that natural conditioning is to say yes and then figure out the consequences. So I think that's, of course, that's very simplistically put, but it's just one, part of the equation. Yeah. So one is, because of loss of face, they don't want the other person to feel offended, notwithstanding the fact that they would be offended anyway, in the larger scheme of things if things are not done. But yeah, so there is, loss of face, there is conditioning. Also, the approach to time is fluid. So if somebody says, hey, can this be done tomorrow or day after? One is perhaps not thinking it through, thinking, okay, I guess it will happen, as compared to a more Western approach of being very clear and very particular about making a commitment, right? Because you're taking into consideration the time and the work. In India, oftentimes it's a more casual approach to time and a more casual approach to deadlines. So they don't mean to, you know, disappoint or offend or lie. It's just that the approach is different and it's not well thought through. The other aspect is that everybody in India is hopeful, hopeful that things will get better, hopeful that, tomorrow will be a better day, hopeful that work will get done. So that also weighs in, because people say, oh, okay, perhaps, that little bit of optimism comes in and they say, okay, maybe we're able to do it. So it's a number of reasons, it could be all of these, any of these, yeah. And, but basically the point is that when people say yes, they don't always think it through for a number of reasons. And it's important for the other person to kind of get them to analyze and think through some of this and figure out whether they can really be, held accountable to that timeline. So I think that's an important piece, which, I've also discussed in the book in terms of how people then work around some of this. And
Yeah.
also, I'd like to say that, this is not just, specific to India. I've seen this in many Asian countries where the same value systems of being, loss of face, of conditioning, and all of this, come in. And, people don't always say yes or say no for the wrong reasons. Yeah.
It's nice the way you say. I think it would be a very optimistic way of looking at life, a positive way, let's say, of looking
Yeah.
at life in that sense. That brings it, yeah, what confusion is for people who are not used to it. Interesting.
Yes.
I have a last question for you. Since you are so much experienced, how would you think that the Western world could empower the Indians who are with this culture or other cultures who are similar to Indian culture, from how could they empower them, make them more inclusive, and harness the power maybe in the when they work together? What do you have a tip?
So I think relationships are really important in the Indian psyche. And, as with everyone, building trust and credibility is important, right? So that's also the case in India, very much so. So it's very important to be able to, connect with people and make them feel comfortable before you, get them to work with you and make them accountable. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's one tip for sure in terms of, being able to, connect with somebody and forge that friendship or relationship. And you can do this in so many ways. It doesn't have to be, some huge thing in terms of time or money or energy. Just taking someone out for a coffee, just having a chat, just being able to connect with the person on some level, and for making the person feel comfortable, sharing some bit of your life or your work, or your family, and asking them some questions as well. So it's different ways. It can be over food, over drink, over conversation, over so many ways, right? But yeah, I think that's important in terms of being able to get people to trust you, and then perhaps they might open up a little bit and share their reservations also in terms of how a work can or won't be done.
Yeah, more about relationship building is what you are trying to say, I think. Yes, you did answer my question. And
Yeah.
I think relationship is indeed very, very important to that culture and other cultures who are similar to the Indian
Yeah.
culture. So, Thank you very much. It was very, very interesting, very enlightening, and most of all, I'm very grateful that you were able to make the time for it, to do this interview so that people can understand the Indian way of working in the future. To people who are interested, they can have a look at this interview and gain some tips and ideas from you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my
Anything else
pleasure.
you
It was
would like
lovely chatting
to?
with you.
Yeah, is there anything else you would like to say before we end?
No, not really. It's a pleasure, and it's great to know that you're also working in the same space and with the same objective of, facilitating more understanding and awareness, in this space. I think whatever we can do to move the needle is great. And it's great to talk to people who appreciate books and reading and insights from them as well, because it's a lot of work that one puts. So it's nice to get that. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.